If you are on Zoom, please identify yourself on the screen by renaming putting your name on the screen so we know who you are. And I'm going to request that everyone mute their microphones to limit background noise. And if we have a quorum, we have a quorum. We do not have a quorum on site, but we will have a quorum between Zoom and here. So if something happens to Zoom and we cannot bring it back within 5 minutes, this meeting will stop and we will continue it at our next session. Tonight, we need a recorder. One of our members is home ill, usually our favorite note taker. We be able to? Okay, great. We can fill everything in that we need to. So Richard Vollander will be our recorder. And thank you, Richard. This time I ask the committee members to indicate that they are present when I call your name. John Soden.
Present.
Deborah Adelman.
Present.
Thank you. Dorcas Miller.
Present.
Richard Vollander.
Present.
Sam Stearns.
Present.
Thank you. Tracy Hansen.
Present.
Mary Beth Barker is not here tonight, and Nat Welch, I'm present. So we have 7 members present, and out of 9, that makes it full quorum. Our first agenda item is to approve the minutes from the February meeting. Are there any edits that the committee members want to make?
No.
Okay.
I move we approve the minutes of February 10th.
Second?
Second.
We got a second. Roll call for that. Richard?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Dorcas?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
And Nat, I also say aye. The minutes are approved unanimously by the members present. I'd like to invite the next item, which will be Marcia, when you're ready.
Ready.
Okay. I'd like to invite Marcia Rasmussen, Director of Planning and Land Management, to provide her monthly update. This memo was sent to the members and it will be available online.
It was posted this afternoon.
Posted this afternoon, and we can pass out copies to them. Marcia.
So 2A is done. 2B, they have started work given the nice weather we had the week of March 7th. The contractor MIG Corporation has begun installation of the wooden T-rail fence, which is fastened to the concrete abutments. He reported that the wildlife monitoring should begin the week of March 7th as well. There's got to be another way of shutting down the computer on the screen.
Yeah. Wildlife
I
monitoring.
know how to do it on mine if we want to switch computers, but then I have to log into a meeting, which I can do with.
We're pausing the meeting for 1 second.
No, it was off, wasn't it? Okay. Let's see.
Okay, Marcia.
And then the wildlife monitoring was going to begin with just cameras and video had been installed, but the pads, which were back to when animals would walk through the culverts. Not installed. Something else.
What if
Feedback's coming from our speaker.
Yeah, what if the person who's talking just goes near the computer and does their report there? And you get rid of the phone.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but you just need to mute everything else. The reverb is because you've got more than one line open. Maybe you already know that.
Turn off.
We knew that already. We're trying to turn off the second one.
I think maybe try disconnecting
Then we'll lose all the sound.
there. Are you muted?
I am not muted
So
anymore.
you need to be muted.
We're working on the sound right now.
Can people hear us now?
Yes. Try.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, maybe we got it. So, and then the stormwater retention issue that I had identified last fall has been resolved. Our brilliant public works engineer, Stefan Chardonnel, suggested that we shift the detention basin 180 degrees, and that avoided the rock outcropping that was causing the problems. So Mass DOT is waiting for the final letter confirming resolution of that issue. So they'll be able to proceed with that in the spring. 2C, you had your public forum on February 16th. A little bit more than 50 people attended that meeting, the forum, and we identified a variety of alternative design solutions. You've met, the subcommittee's met several times since that date, which you've put together for this evening's presentation. The last half mile of phase 2C is moving forward, albeit slowly. The GPI project manager, Matt Kearney, has reported that Mass DOT has provided the comments made by the different Mass DOT reviewers. And for the Concord portion of the trail, the specification and plan comments were mainly questions of consistency with the Sudbury portion of the trail, with the only comment requiring the town's feedback was the material of the bump outs for our interpretive panel signs. And so in Sudbury, they will be using pervious pavers. Concord's design was to extend the asphalt pavement. So after discussing with Natural Resources Director Delia Kay and learning there's only a slight increase in cost and maintenance, I asked that the design be modified to use the pervious pavers for the two interpretive sign bump outs because they are located near White Pond and the vernal pool. There's a bigger question regarding the amenities, whether they should be participating, which means they are included in the Mass DOT budget funds, or non-participating, which means that the town or others have to provide the funding. And these two of these elements are in Concord. They are the granite mile markers and the interpretive signs. So Matt Kearney has provided information that was submitted previously from the town, the advisory committee, and the Friends to support these elements being included in the overall Mass DOT budget, noting that Concord reduced the number of interpretive panels from 6 to 2 for this stretch of the trail. And I feel that they're important because they provide both the geologic history and the sensitive environment information around White Pond and the vernal pool. And so if they determine or remain convinced that it is non-participating, I will work with the town manager to identify funds either through our community preservation grant or other alternatives. And then finally, GPI is seeking additional contract amendment for funding of $21,062 due to the additional work required by the fence design and redesign and the coordination with the Sudbury design consultant. So Matt is reaching out to Mass DOT to determine if they could provide this financial assistance to the town, but no decision has been made to date. There was no update on the phase 2D in Sudbury from their website, and I didn't hear back from their planner. And our community connections grant has all been approved for continuation. It has to be installed prior to May 31st. And then the Concord Prison Cemetery, we've got a meeting scheduled for March 23rd with members of
Concord Prison Outreach to discuss possible funding of this. So that's my update.
Thank you, Marcia.
Yes.
You're putting interpreter signs near White Pond.
Yes.
Would that cause people to take more interest in White Pond, which I think the people around White Pond prefer to be no interest?
I understand, but I think it's really important to provide alternatives so that if they are interested in swimming in White Pond, to be informed of where they can go over on the other side of the pond and pay a fee to swim at the public beach.
So I think it's a good question. I think that we went from 6 to 2.
I think we should all speak up or it might be
Okay.
hard to hear.
Can you guys hear us okay?
No.
Yes, that's better. Speak up, please.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the interpretive panel for the sensitive environment feels like a useful one to have in that it will tell people why, we're trying to keep people on the trail itself rather than jump down. The other one about the geologic, I'm a geology nut, but I get it. You're concerned about people stopping and then leaving the trail.
No,
Okay.
yes, especially, a lot of them will just take their bikes and go ski on the trails.
Well, that's not a given. And if prior committees had decided that it was important to share the history of White Pond and discuss why it was important geologically and for the community and to provide for alternatives. So that is something that we can continue with. Kay is going to be working with me to come up with the language for that. And we will probably seek input from the White Pond Advisory Committee and others on that.
Quick question. What is GPI?
That's the name of the company, the Freeman
Oh,
Peterson
okay.
Incorporated. Is the initial
Like a
start.
Like a consulting company?
Yes,
or-
they are the design engineers that the town has hired.
Okay.
And any update on the fencing in terms of, has MassDOT said, yeah, it's okay to do more fencing or less, or am I missing something that we've already talked about?
I don't have a definitive answer yet from MassDOT on that. The plans were revised and it is part of the next phase of
Got it,
design.
okay.
Asking for that extension of I think it was about 200 feet of fencing
Okay.
to tie into where the embankment begins to rise again south of the White Pond view shed.
Okay. All right, and we have on the site or somewhere, we have the materials that if anybody from White Pond wants to read about what it looks like, the memo that we sent, so it's not available for people to see, just in case. they
It
have
is
questions.
not yet online, but I will find that and have it.
Okay, I just want to make sure that people feel like, yeah, we're pushing for this. We want to make sure it's happening. Okay, that's good. Any other member questions? Online, Deborah, John, or Sam? Any questions for the memo?
I do not have any questions.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much, Marcia. Thanks to your team. I should probably note that this morning, I sat in on a meeting with some folks from Acton related to putting a ramp from the Route 2 bridge over to the Acton playing fields. It's really an Acton, it's got to be driven by Acton, but there is some movement now happening. And so over the next few years, there may be a ramp that will allow people to ride the trail from other parts of Acton and then get a ramp to the playing fields. And I guess it's soccer and cricket they play over there. But it was a question that had come up from Barbara Pike and the Friends almost over a year ago about what might happen. And so we've made some progress with that. And Marcia was kind enough to sit in on that call. On to the committee business. And if I'm not being clear for the audience here, or if you can't hear me on there, please let me know. The first item on our agenda is the Junction Park conceptual redesign. I'm going to ask the chair of the subcommittee in a second to speak. I want to remind everyone that our task from the select board was a written recommendation on conceptual redesign of Junction Park to ensure the safety, and separation of two types of users, wheeled users and pedestrians, I'm paraphrasing. We're to include a recommendation for the short term that augments the current signage and addresses the possible increase in ridership from the completion of Route 2, the Route 2 bridge. And then we need to deliver this to the select board by June 30th. Tracy, would you like to speak to
Sure.
and lead this discussion?
Marcia, is it okay to get the PowerPoint up?
I will do that right now.
Thank you.
And while we're getting it up, just in terms of, this will be a committee discussion primarily, except for I think in the short term one, we probably want to ask for some public input. But for any of these, we have the email, Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, bfrtac@concordma.gov. So I'd like to ask any members of the public, if you have kind of good ideas, lengthy comments, pros and cons, to please email us using the numbers that are on the that are on these charts, which will be posted. There are 7 of them. Tracy's going to walk through them now. But I'd like the committee to have most of the discussion. Of course, the public can step in. Okay, Tracy.
All right,
please.
thank you, Nat. All right, if anybody can't hear me, if you could please like go like this, because there's a few of you that we can see, and that way we'll know if we have to talk louder. And that's for anybody tonight. So to recap what we're going to talk about tonight, Marcia, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Thank you. All right, so first we'll quickly recap the public forum that we had in February 16th, which feels like forever ago already. Then we'll talk about the next steps to make sure that we can actually meet this June due date that Nat talked about, where we have to give the town our plans at the end of June. Then we will talk short-term proposals first. We have one proposal that we think might actually be ready to deliver to the town. So one topic to discuss is if we actually want to do that and if it's ready or not, which is fine. That's the case. Then we will move into long-term proposals, and we have 7 different proposals to look at. And that conversation will be very high level, and we'll be talking about pros and cons of each concept. Would you mind going forward? Thank you. So we had the virtual public forum February 16th, and maybe that was a good idea given we've had a few challenges tonight. Prior to the forum, we had a survey that we passed around, and we actually had over 500 people from Concord and other towns participate and give us a lot of great feedback. Then we had the public forum, which again was virtually, as Marcia said, 53 people attended. And we did have 4 committee members present. Sam, it was great to have you there. And so we heard a lot of the same feedback that we had in our survey, which was great to see that it was aligned. Of course, probably people who filled out the survey might have come to the meeting as well. But we did also hear some new perspective, and so that was valuable for us to go through that process. Thank you, Marcia. That brings us to our next steps from now until June. And so today, as I said, our main goal today is to look at our concepts, both short and long term, and figure out how to proceed. And so what I'm talking about right now is a proposal, basically, and I'm hoping that the committee can tell us if they feel like this is the way we should proceed or if we need to modify the plan. So keep that in mind. But right now we'll have today's meeting. We're thinking possibly April 5th, the subcommittee and whoever else would like to attend will join the staff to look at the concepts that tonight we decide we want to proceed with and get their feedback on how feasible they are. Perhaps we're missing really obvious aspects and they can further guide us. Then our next planned Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee is actually a couple days after that, April 7th. And so we're thinking we'll have that meeting, then a few days later be able to share with the broader committee what we learned, discuss, further refine our concepts at that time. Then a few weeks later, when Nat and I will be a year older, we'll have a
And wiser.
right, and wiser, of course. We're thinking it might be a good idea to have a walking public forum in the park where we actually have the posters, or sorry, that we have concepts that we've decided to move forward with on display around the park, and we actually physically go there and think about the concepts and what might work and discuss it with the public. Okay.
I will not be a year older than that yet. So, you know, 2 days
I
later,
will,
yes.
unfortunately.
Okay, go ahead.
You'll be wiser than me.
Go ahead, sorry.
So that's what we were thinking. Then our next Bruce Freeman meeting is May 5th. We were thinking ideally at that time, we would have a proposal written because we want to provide something in writing to the town and give them a full understanding of why we are working on this project, why we feel it's really important, what the limitations are, you know, what we considered, what ideas we tossed out, which ones we move forward with and why. So we hope to have a draft on May 5th. And then June 2nd, since it's getting close to our June 30th due date, we're hoping we can approve our final proposal and send that off to the town. So what does everybody think about that plan?
I just had a quick question. When we've done similar things, when we go to the town, do we just give them one final or do you give them 2 alternatives and you sort of leave it up to them to pick?
I think the task was plural in the sense of conceptual redesign ideas. So if there could be 2 or 3 that we think none of them are perfect, but they're worth more work by the town to figure it out. In other words, the meeting that we're having with the town engineers is and other staff that we're thinking of having as a subcommittee is to make sure we're not doing anything really stupid or to, you know, learn from them. They might say, you know, Plan 27 is totally crazy because I know it's going to take $18 million to build it or something. But we want to kind of get their gut feedback. We're not asking them to, you know, to do detailed designs, but just to say, yeah, we could figure out a way to make this one work if the town wants to do it. So I think it's more than one idea, Deborah, because I think there are reasons to produce more than one because they meet different sets of criteria. And some of them might be more challenging, more expensive, but they also may be, quote, better. Others may be cheaper but less easy to do. So it was a long answer, but I think we need more than one proposal.
Any other questions?
I had just one clarification. In terms of the short-term proposal and submitting to the town, it's not, I think it was your suggestion that maybe we should have a look at the short term. My take is that we're kind of giving it to them because we have a limited time, that the town staff can then kind of dive into it and say, oh yeah, you know, these are the things we're going to need. If we're going to do it this way, it'll cost us this. And we can add that information into our recommendation for the short term. So I just want people to be clear, we're not going with, you know, this isn't necessarily the final one, but we want to get some of the work done since we have a short time frame as Keo has often reminded us.
I have a
Yes.
question. What kind of a barrier are you putting between the walking and the biking?
So today is actually high level, so we're just talking about pathways, but I'm actually going to hold that question and we'll come back to that later. But are we able to get the PowerPoint?
I lost my connection,
Okay.
so I'm working on it.
That's fine.
There we go. There you're live.
Oh, perfect. If you could go to the JP.
I'm trying.
Okay. Pain in the neck.
Are people hearing us okay out there?
Not going.
Yes.
fast, So
Thank you.
Yep.
just a minute.
That's fine. So just to recap, we'll be going over short and long-term plans. The short-term plans will maintain the existing layout, changing as little as possible, just trying to separate rail trail users from non-rail trail users. The long-term concepts will potentially change the existing layout a little bit or quite a bit, as you'll see. And then as we look at these different drawings, you'll see that Marcia and her team did a fantastic job of putting these drawings together. And one of the indicators that I particularly liked is that she made the trees that already exist green. So I know a lot of us wanted to keep the beautiful trees we have, so you'll be able to see which trees are kept and which aren't. Not that we're looking at details today.
We're working on the PowerPoint for those of you. There we go.
You got it. All right. So here's the park as we know, just as a refresher for anyone who, wants it. North is towards the train tracks, as you can see at the top of the screen. The bottom is the, what is that called now? I should know. Main Street, thank you. And to the right is 7-Eleven. To the left is Woods Hill Table and Club Car Cafe. So just to orient you again. All right, so that brings us to our short-term concepts again. So tonight we're staying really high level. I know I like to get into details, but we're going to try really hard to just stay high level and talk about what's important, which is the flow of traffic and separating rail trail users from non-rail trail users. So if we could go to the short-term picture, yeah. So this is a potential short-term plan, and what's important here is that we're not necessarily saying how we're going to do it, but the main concept here is just you take the existing trail and you separate it into two portions. And Marcia has told us that the minimum width of the rail trail has to be 8 feet so that you have 4 feet per lane. And because of that, that means that we can have 8 feet rail trail, 4 foot non-rail trail area, basically. So that's what this short-term plan proposes. And it does, what it does not propose is how we separate, because what we're trying to do here is just give the town something to work with and say, hey, we think this will work for a short-term solution. Please help us figure out how to do it. And then I'd add that the other important aspect of this plan in my mind is that towards the north of the picture, towards the top, where you see there's green rectangles. Now those could be any sort of thing. It could be a table, it could be landscaping, it could be planters, whatever, use your imagination. But the idea is that you visually block the train tracks and make it clear that the rail trail turns.
So just to add a little color, there is color, the colored area, if you can see it, on the left side of the path represents where the bikes would go. One piece of information which I shared with the committee, but is not yet been posted, is that I met with via telephone the bike and pedestrian coordinator of Mass DOT, Pete Sutton, and thank you to Ms. Keogh for introducing us. He actually came out the day before we spoke, and he said he thought that you could put, he had a suggestion for a thin barrier, there are various kinds, and you could put it in the pathway and you'd have enough space for bikes and others. This is obviously an idea that's going to need more work, but the kinds of, he referred to specifically a company called Design Line with a Z, and they have they're metal, some of them are artistic looking, some they can just be like posts with a thing on the bottom, but they would need to be put into the ground. They would be fixed to the ground, and they would provide physical separation. And so on his, that was his thinking. That was his response back to us. You can do it. We don't yet have, and this is one of the things we'd ask the town to do with a short-term one, is say, let's find out if it has to be 8 feet, if it's going to be 6, what's the thing? Because we recognize on the walking side, there are parts of it that'll be thinner, right? If you actually put something in there and you separate the two. So this was the short-term idea based upon the visit by the man from Mass DOT.
Okay. One question, if you can hear me on interpreting the visual, it looks like the big curve near Club Cafe after the two new dividers. Is it right to say that that's about 8 feet wide today? So if a biker is coming around in front of Club Car Cafe it'd be 8 feet, and then as they go, around that turn towards Main Street, then they would now have a new lane that's also 8 feet wide. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, some width, 8 feet is the starting point. But yes,
Okay.
that's the idea.
Thank you.
Let me ask other committee members for comments, and then I'll get to the public.
So I saw some slide that had the barriers such that if you came like across Main Street, you would see a sign, there'd be a low sign or something, say bikes over
Right,
this
over
way,
this way, right.
walkers this way.
Right.
And it would be low enough that you'd see it on a bike.
Right.
And you'd hopefully capture as many people as possible to do that.
Right,
And from the other direction, you would be led that way to some extent, just by coming
through the,
through that.
Yeah,
It wouldn't
through
be
that,
as crucial, but at that point, you need to have some kind of signage
Right.
to tell people. Okay.
so I also want to remind, and Tracy and the subcommittee, we had this conversation, which is none of these ideas are perfect. And part of what we're trying to do is to say, what are we losing? What's good? What's bad about this, right? So someone could say, what's bad is, well, you're making the walkway skinnier for walkers. Right? So these are the things we want to capture from our work, from the committee members thinking, the pros and the cons, and what questions do you still have? And that, I think, is a way to keep this conversation moving forward, as opposed to saying this is a terrible idea versus it's a good idea. So I'd like to encourage people to think about, if you think it's a terrible idea, what might be one idea you think is good about it? And if you think it's a really good idea, what's one idea that's bad about it? So I'd like us to think in both sides.
Right. To add something that came up in our committee meetings, we were starting to think about the trade-off. So I know the idea of what Richard, which had just proposed, has come up, where you have a physical barrier between and a sign indicating which path is for whom. That, of course, physically it physically separates rail trail users from non-rail trail, and it actually makes it difficult, if not impossible, to cross over to the other. So we need to determine if we are okay with that, if that's problematic. There are other solutions that we could probably come up with, like a Freedom Trail type line just on the road where you have the path completely open. You're suggesting bikes go on the left side and non-rail trail on the other side might not be followed as well, but these are the kind of things we need to think about.
I have a question about, my observation is that many of the bikers want to go to the 7-Eleven.
Snacks.
Okay, so that's, yeah, definitely one of the
Yeah, that's a good
Instead of
point.
the walkers.
Yes, so on this, there is so the blue area on the right side of it, there's a solid line that I believe is intended to indicate a barrier, right? Not sure exactly what it looks like. It's something that's
Could you point to that, Marshall? If you know where it is.
on here.
What are you talking about?
For the public here, this bluish area is
Yeah,
the biking
that's-
side, and the
yeah.
solid line in the left of the bluish, right, I'm sorry, the right of the bluish area
Yeah.
represents a barrier.
Yes, and so is this a cut?
That's an
through, such
opening,
as what-
yeah,
that's an
what
opening,
this is?
right.
I actually, sorry, I interpreted this as a separation, not a physical barrier, just to be clear.
Okay, no.
That was
right,
my
right.
understanding.
And what Pete Sutton said is you can put this barrier that
Okay,
we share in the
yeah.
subcommittee, right?
Yeah,
So there's an opening. So the pro of the opening is people can cut across. The con of the opening is that you have
People can cut
congestion and people
across.
can run into each other.
That's
So
right.
this is the,
Yeah.
the trade-offs that we have to think about. So is a physical barrier over most of this, keeping the cyclists on one side, is that a strong enough positive to say, here's a way that we could think about the short term, because you can install these things very quickly. And I'm not advocating this. I'm just saying, that would be one of the pros, right? You can put it in. It can be in place pretty fast if the town will pay for it, et cetera. But there are other challenges with it. So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off, did I?
no,
Okay. Yeah, okay. Public?
What do you have time?
Yes, why don't we, because this one I think is worth spending a little time on. If
Yeah.
we're here.
And I don't think we need to give the town guidance right now on what the separation looks like. I think we could give them, basically, I think it'd be great if we just give them something to get started, because June will be here before you know it, and I know how long things take at my company, and it'll take some time to get
Right.
something actually set up.
So,
I couldn't agree with Tracy more. Dory Keough, 51 MacArthur Road. And let me just say that what I'm afraid of is that if something like this will look like a permanent plan, and it could become a permanent plan.
yeah,
And that's a real concern for me. Now, Phil Posner, who's a bike person who was not able to be here, I know has sent you material. And the very first meeting was discussed at a select board meeting. He showed sort of barriers so that bikes could only get in at one place.
Right.
And a chicane gate is, I think, the word that I've learned, the word chicanery. Chicanery comes from it. It's something so that you have to go around. And I talked to a bunch of bikers who were there from the Monsters in the Basement, which, as you know, is the bike group in town. They said this is something very common. I suggest you look at this. It's online and they're used heavily in California. And what it is an opening that you could walk through, or you could push a carriage through, but you have to get off your bike to go through. But just having said that, that's something to think about. I like the idea, and I'm so pleased that you're thinking in terms of a temporary plan, because one is going to be critical.
Right.
Because people coming into the park for the first time won't have any idea where to go, and so being able to do this. But Phil Posner then had suggested the idea of having some sort of an opening so that would bring the bikes in. That came, they're going to get in one place. And then he suggested something about putting a plate, tables or something in the center area. So, because I've talked to a number of people and said, okay, so you have to get off your bike to get in. Would you stay off your bike? Not a word. Said my actually doctor here in town. He said, I could see it safe. I'll just go through. But if there's something where there's tables or something gathered in the center, that you have to get off your bike, that this might work. This would be very inexpensive for people coming in. But I'm really here. Yes, tables in the center here, set up, and actually, I think I'm not going to talk a lot, but I just want you to consider that. But I'm very nervous if you start putting in permanent signs or anything looking permanent, it works okay. And so be very careful of that.
So again, we're going to make a recommendation, and I think that that's absolutely one of the trade-offs. Will the town just say, well, this is good enough for now? And the question is, if it meets the principles of safety and separation, is how do we feel about that as a community? If it's not the perfect long-term, I mean, I don't have the right answer. I'm just raising the question that there are these trade-offs, and we were told to do separation and safety. That was a task from us. And I think your point about does it become permanent is something we all need to think about as residents here in terms of doing. So that would be part of what we would include in our report, that there's a concern that the town will not move forward and do something bigger and better.
Yeah.
So thank you. And Dory, I don't think we've seen anything from Phil sent into the mailbox. I do not recall seeing anything, but I don't want to sound like Dick Nixon when I say I don't recall at this point in time. Okay, so right.
Well, let me check with him, Mike, because I'm surprised he hasn't, because he's mentioned it several different times, and so I want to make sure that he hasn't. He should do so.
So he should mail it into the BFRTAC.
Yeah, no, I will have him do that. I mean, I will ask him to do that because it's well worth. But I'm very pleased that you're thinking in terms of temporary. But yeah, but that's great to get something safe. And the other small question is, when you have a trail where people can go across, that's dangerous because, and so I would rather have something so that there's a way that bikes are safe and but everybody is safe. But if it's something, I think if you look at Phil's idea, it might be worth a crack. And there were several bikers who are real bikers. I don't know if maybe some of you are, but who do this Monsters in the Basement business. And they said that they've seen this particularly in the West Coast.
So if you could have it send it in,
I'll do it. Yeah.
You have that?
Well, I just, okay, the
Name
blue,
and address.
Yeah, name and
oh, I'm
address.
sorry, Cosette 131 Ministerial Drive.
Thank you.
My first question was, okay, all of this blue is at least 8 feet wide, is that what you're telling me? Oh, okay, all right. So, and it does make it pretty narrow.
Makes it
there
narrow,
for-
yeah,
for
I
walking.
totally get it. I mean, again, that's a
Yeah.
con that we have.
Yeah.
And we have people online who also would like to speak.
Okay, okay, good. Okay. Let me finish with people in the room here, and then we will call online. Anybody else?
Yeah, Peter Lowe, 5 Westfield Drive. I think probably the simplest way to do this short term, and it's sure it's a short term solution, is just paint it and put bike markers on the blue area. That doesn't, that means there aren't bikes around, pedestrians can walk through the area. But it's clearly demarcated. I like the way that you cause the curve on the north side and block off the access to the rail crossing. I think that's well thought out. I think you guys have done a nice job with this.
Thank you. Did you have a comment?
Marilyn Lowe at 5 Westfield Drive. So is this existing, not the separation part, but they're not big, that area that is the proposed separation, it's already existing space.
So everything, yeah, everything is as it is, as you see, except for basically the line that we added and the little green coloring to demarcate the rail trail area. And then the little green rectangles, which are some sort of barricade.
Okay.
But we're not making any physical changes
Okay.
to the
Well,
To the
structure.
space.
To the layout.
this
Sorry, go ahead.
design actually does change it slightly for that turn.
Ah.
It's
Yeah,
up as
just-
a turn, it makes it easier to make that turn.
Okay.
What is the name of that structure that, was that you, Dorcas, that you mentioned that they're using in California?
Chicane gate.
Is that, can you spell that or put it in the chat? I don't know if we have a chat.
CHICANE. CAINE, sorry.
CHI,
CAINE.
Like Chicago.
oh, okay.
Okay. We have one more person in the room here, and then we'll go to Zoom.
Susan Hanson, Park Lane. This is just I'm wondering, is there anywhere that there are bike racks so that people who want to go in and eat or stop have a place to put them? Because I don't see that
Not
on
here,
here.
it was planned out, but let's add that as a comment. Thank you. That's good.
There are bike racks on the other side,
right.
over along the trail on the north side of the parking area.
Right.
There
I was
will
just
be.
thinking that if you want to go in that cafe, where they're going to dump the bikes.
That's true.
Good point.
Yeah.
It's
You
no
know, we've got public comment.
Yeah, so we'll do that. So public members, the first one is at the top.
Sally and
is
Bill?
Sally and Bill Satterworth. Could you name and address, please?
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Sally Satterthwaite, 297 Losbrook Road.
Thank you.
And my husband and I have enjoyed walking our tandem through the park, and I'm also a member of the Green Thumbs. When I look at the picture, my question becomes, looking at the areas where you have cross traffic, are there rules of right of way? Do pedestrians, are cyclists expected to always yield to pedestrians who want to either cross in that middle section or walk to the Club Car Cafe from that lot?
Very good question. Thank you. That's an excellent question. We don't have answers, but the question is a good one for us to consider. Cynthia Katz, I think you're next.
Yep, thank you. Cynthia Katz, 20 Conant Street. Yeah, so we're big walkers on the trail. Can you hear me?
Yes,
We can.
We can.
Great, okay. So we're big walkers on the trail, and I guess when I look at this plan, I think that given that the park has some aesthetic redeeming features, this is going to destroy it. And I worry about how short-term plans become long-term plans. And I think that you're going to end up with this incredibly convoluted, narrow problem. There's not going to be a sense of the park as a place. You can see all these little bump outs where there's actual seating. And I really think that it's going to negate that the park as a place to linger, to walk, because you're going to have this line of bikers. I really think to reconsider the short-term plan with the turn down Commonwealth Ave and then back onto the rail, that the rail trail does not go through the park. It goes down the street and then back over after the tracks, is a solution that recognizes aesthetics. And I also think to have a short-term plan where you're talking about barriers, but you're not showing examples of what that would look like.
Well, we're saying separation.
Okay, well, I'm also hearing people use the word barrier, and I'm hearing people talk about putting things in the ground and installing things. So that to me is a physical thing. And I think to what, you know, when you're talking about design stuff, even at the beginning level, you really have to have visuals. Thank you.
So we're trying to keep this really high level. This is really just the concept of existing path. And then there's some way to separate it. That was really what we're hoping to decide on today.
Okay, as opposed, so I guess my thought is, I don't think going through Junction Park and creating these lanes is a good idea. I think there are other short-term solutions that are going to be better.
Thank you.
Ellen Quackenbush.
Ellen Quackenbush?
Oh, hi, folks. This is sort of what Cynthia was saying, but it seems to me, is there a way to basically split the width of Junction Park between bikes and pedestrians? Because I know that many people who use Junction Park are ambling along, and they often have kids. And it seems to me the bikers, I don't think they should be two-way. I think bikers should be walking through there, and if it's narrow, they'll walk. I think what's going to happen is pedestrians will be single file. Think about kids, kind of single file, and there won't be a place to sit, admire the landscaping, realize the landscaping is now only the landscape. As you look at this on the right-hand side is really enjoyed and viewed by pedestrians. The other bikers are in the way. And as a avid gardener, I think that's a shame. Also, I wonder what the rules are about the bioretention area, which I thought was a gift and couldn't be changed. I wondered what that dotted line was that cuts off a little bit.
Doesn't change the retention area at all.
Okay, so that dotted line doesn't mean anything, the long hatched line?
Yeah, ignore the hyphenated line and the dashed lines. Those are just property lines, or I think that.
Oh, I got it.
Artifacts.
Yeah, artifacts from existing drawings.
Okay. So I would just say to enable pedestrians to amble and truly enjoy the park, I would say bicyclists should not have the priority of having, 8 foot wide all places, that it should be at the least equally split between pedestrian and bicyclists should have to walk.
Thank you. I don't think we've heard from Daniel yet, right?
Correct.
Daniel?
Yes, hi, thank you. This is Dan Stapleton from 20 Conant Street. And I guess I appreciate your work. I'm probably gonna reiterate a little bit of some of the previous comments. I think you're taking a well-used pedestrian park where bikers are intended to dismount, and you're creating a plan that encourages them not to dismount. And it's really gonna turn the area into something that's predominantly a bike path as opposed to a pedestrian use path.
Thank you. Has anybody else not spoken yet? I don't know if we can.
Nancy Crowley.
Oh,
Nancy Crowley.
Foley isn't using the function. She's just raising her hand.
Okay, Nancy?
Yes, sorry, I couldn't find anything. I'm actually live at 5.
Can you speak up a little bit, please, Nancy?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, I live at 5 Concord Green in Concord. And I am also a member of the Green Thumbs, but basically I'm speaking for myself as well.
The Junction Park over the years has become just a really beautiful, wonderful, peaceful place where residents from Concord Park, mothers with babies, kids, somebody just wanting to have their lunch or a cup of coffee. And it's really become very beautiful. And I'm kind of taken back when I see this path going right through the middle of it and leaving such a small area. To me, it's become all of a sudden the main goal, the main pathway for bicycles. And it seems to have left the original intent and what we've been doing all along for residents and others out of it. So I really feel there's got to be a better way. I thought maybe you were going to look at going through just on the other side, right next to the club car, right on the side of the retention area. I guess that's all. I just want to say that.
That's in another plan. We will be talking about that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So again, I just want to remind everybody that the select board recognizes that the railroad right-of-way and the park share the same thing and share the same space. They recognize that both bikers and walkers have the right to be there. And they've asked us to look at how do you create separation and safety. And so that's the task that we're trying to figure out using the current space for a short-term solution. So that's, we know people walk there. We know from the survey that 5% of the people actually, sit, at least the ones who answered the survey. We know that 60 or 70% are crossing the park for one reason or another, but are not staying there. We recognize the work that the Green Thumbs have done, and we're trying to figure out how do we balance the needs of competing users and do it in a way that, I think Ms. Katz brought up the issue of the aesthetics, of the park. And so, I mean, the principles that we've been thinking about that we wrestled with earlier on, we're balancing the need for safety with the need to keep the park aesthetically pleasing, inclusive, and welcoming. That's the number one principle that the committee had said that they want to consider. So I think these points are all well taken, and we're trying to capture where people are. And at the same time, our task is to figure out how to make something like this happen. And I think in our experience with the committee, the subcommittee, Tracy, is none of these are going to be excellent solutions. Right? They're all going to have their upsides and downsides. The very good one being, well, if you put a barrier in, will the town just get bored and not want to change it, right? I tend to doubt that a number of people on this call or in the room would allow that to happen. But would it provide the short-term safety that folks are looking for? So I'm not trying to say, oh, this is the thing we have to do. I'm trying to say that we're all trying to balance and manage these competing things, with our task being create separation and safety in the park, because both sets of users are there, and you need to figure out how to make it. Not all of them will be happy. I will say one thing about markings and the dismounting comment reminded me of it. Pete Sutton, who does this for a living and has for 25 years or more, said he has never ever seen so many signs in such a small place saying the same thing. You can't imagine that it's actually, and nobody pays attention to it. But I took that as an interest. That was the first thing he said to me when we started to talk. So
the big one isn't even there.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get on my
Yeah.
head, Tracy.
I'm just going to add my personal opinion. So Tracy Hansen, 77 Hill Street. For one, I found the physical separation, while safe in that it does separate everyone, I found it extremely ugly. So I'm not a fan of that solution. Originally, I didn't want to separate the trail 8 feet and 4 feet. I wanted to put planters in the middle to encourage people to flow around. I thought that would be pretty. It would tell people that they needed to go slowly because there's an obstacle and clearly people are walking around. So I thought that would allow cyclists to stay on their bike, but go very slowly because people are respectful when they see that there's people walking about. But I thought the planters, when they're all along, like I think it'd be this really, I imagine this pretty row of flowers, and the planters would tell you where to turn. And beyond the planters would be the pedestrians, of course. That was how I envisioned it, and that to me felt like a park, and I thought that would indicate to people on wheels that they should go slow. And I also agree, I forget who said it, but somebody said we would be encouraging people to stay on their bike by firmly separating with a physical barrier. I'm a big cyclist, and I completely agree with that. So.
Thank you.
Sorry, but that is my personal opinion, so I know I'm not supposed to have one.
We have two repeat people on Zoom. Do you want to take repeat comments?
Sure.
Okay. Sally and Bill separately.
Oh, sorry, Sally and Bill, please.
Hey, I just wanted to say that to give 4 feet to baby carriages, walkers, baby carriages going both ways, let's make that clear, can't pass in a 4 feet path. To use the word safety in conjunction with pedestrians in this is, to be blunt, Orwellian. I mean, it's all backwards. Give 4 feet to the bikes going both ways and the pedestrians 8 feet. Little kids, who's going to pay their bills if they happen to end up falling, uncontrolled in front of a bicycle in these circumstances? It's just totally unacceptable, and I hope the town says an absolute no to it.
Thank you.
We have a comment, yes.
I'm Ken Miller this is maybe a crazy idea, but is the main thing you're really looking for that bikers and just walkers are safe? Is that the main thing?
Yeah, and to tell them, and to know, sorry, and to designate for the rail trail where they should go, because there was so much confusion of where they're supposed to go.
Now, one possibility is you could have a small bridge over the rail trail, over the rail line,
Okay.
and also another little tunnel under. So one of them is for people hiking, and the other one is for people who want to ride their bikes.
Yeah, that'd be long. Yeah, definitely long term.
No, I said it was kind of crazy.
It's worth talking about this, but yeah, we're still talking short term, and I'm thinking, so I see when
Ellen and Cynthia are both.
Okay, so let's take comments from Ellen and Cynthia, and then I think we should move on to long term, and we'll probably have many of the same themes in that conversation. So we'll just take these last 2 comments. Cynthia, if you'd like to go next.
Sure. I guess Cynthia Katz, 20 Conant Street. So I hear that safety is the really important thing, but I'm also hearing, is it not possible to move the rail trail out of Junction Park?
I think we can say no at this point, to be realistic.
In the short term, and I mean,
This is this summer we're talking about.
right, this is
Yeah, the
summer.
bridge opens in July.
Yeah. keep saying that.
And by the way, the town in 2010 did a very long, in-depth study of 8 different eight or nine,
Yes, there were 8.
8 alternatives, looking at all the different ways to go through the park and around it, et cetera. And they settled on this. And again, I would point out the history of the right of way is the park was put onto the right of way. And our job is to figure out how to have the 2 of them live well together. That's what we need to try and do. In the short term, it may be aesthetically unpleasing or whatever. We hope, but we need to come up with some way of doing it. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. But.
No, it's okay. I think we have one more comment, or did you have a
I
comment?
have just one, maybe 2. One is that it seems as though the issue of people getting off their bikes, that's a lot of the signage might be about that. It seems like in the deliberations there's acknowledgement that not everybody's going to get off their bikes. I mean, and,
A lot of
and yet at
this,
the same time, we don't want to necessarily encourage them to stay on their bikes, but the realization is that some people, a significant number, especially if there's nobody else around, are going to stay on their bikes. Right. And the other thing that I thought of the other day, and I drove by again today, was whether or not at some point there, the Junction Park people may not like this idea, but at the entrance to Junction Park, there be a nice wrought iron sign that says Junction Park. When you arrive, you're going under it. So it's Junction Park. So it reaffirms in your brain that you're entering a park.
Yeah, signify.
You know, might be worthwhile.
Artistic.
Well, no, it's not a sign. This is it'd be a very nice artistic looking thing. It'd be part of the park design. Many parks have that. They have a sign announcing that you're entering a park. So that may be something to consider as well. It's not gonna solve anything, but it might help.
But it's not short term either. It's not gonna happen by July, right?
It's not gonna take any longer than the physical barrier.
So,
I can make it so.
One last comment online.
Silly.
Take that
Yeah,
now.
well, it's good.
Yeah,
Who is it?
Ellen
Ellen?
Quackenbush.
Ellen Quackenbush? Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I guess I'm hearing, and maybe I'm hearing this wrong, because it's a little bit hard for me to hear all the committee members. I think that if safety is an issue, and please understand that the town and many people, well, the town has said dismounting your bike was the main way to achieve safety in the past. And I think allocating 8 feet to the bike trail kind of undercuts that. I would say split Junction Park pathway between the bikes and the pedestrians so that bicyclists actually have to dismount. I think that would keep things safer and also, I think, preserve the aesthetics in the current use by pedestrians. So I would encourage the committee to actually narrow the trail for the bikers so they have to dismount. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like to go on to long-term now, unless there's any comments from the committee before we move on. No, actually, before we go on, so at the beginning, I'm actually going to change my mind, but we had said, are we ready to submit? I think we've had enough feedback to make it clear that we're not ready to submit to the town. And I just want to find out how the committee feels about that. Unless we do want to just say this is a really rough plan and make sure that we frame it as this is roughly what we're thinking. It's a starting point. Let's see what you as the town staff do with it.
So what I've heard is some sort of separation, whether it's 8-4 or you flip it so that the bikers have less. The reason I took away from the subcommittee meeting when you suggested it was if it takes us another month or two to kind of write up the report, that's a month or two we've lost in terms of actually wrestling with some of the details of this plan. So I like the idea of throwing I guess I'll call this plan split the pathway plan, right? And throwing it over the fence to, Marcia may hate me for this, but throwing it over the fence to the town staff and say, this is what we're thinking. These are the comments we've got back. There's comments about aesthetics. There's comments about, we need it wider for the pedestrians. And I mean, I think of them as being experts in a lot of things, and they can kind of wrestle with part of it and come back and say, you're crazy about this, or here's 3 things you could try. But at least have them start to think about it so that we can get a bit more expertise in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to hear what other members of the committee have to say.
Yeah, I thank you for that comment. I was just really struggling with the concepts because as a biker, we are relatively compliant because myself, like other bikers, and I know that some of the other committee members are bikers as well. I mean, I know people have been injured. And so we are very in tune with what rules are and let's follow the rules. And when you think about a rail trail, conceptually, a rail trail is for everyone. It's for pedestrians and bikers. And so, if anything, and I know you have some of these choices in the 7 diagrams, to the extent we can break out, create that other pathway that will achieve safety and be consistent with, I think, a biker's mentality. So I was really struggling with that. with the diagram for that reason. I agree with the comments that, you're sort of artificially, creating these narrower areas. I just don't know if that would work just from experience. But I really like the ideas that you're going to see later. I think some of those are just more workable. I kind of went online and started looking at those barriers. Barriers are great. Any barriers that, kind of nudge, again, the bikers looking way ahead. They're going, at whatever speed, and they're thinking ahead. Barriers are great because we can see them and we make a move. I struggle with this one.
Thank you, Deb.
I have one comment, and that is, we're looking short term, and as long as this doesn't become a permanent plan, this is probably something we can do for this year.
Yeah.
And it's not expensive. So that probably would give it some validity from my point of view. I would not want this to be a permanent plan, but it's a short-term plan. Get us through a year or two, this is bad.
I'm also cognizant that, Deborah, when you started to speak as a biker, I think this is the first voice that said I'm a biker and this is how I feel. And I think I've made this comment internally, but I'm going to make it in public, which is I feel like there are two tribes, the biker tribe and the walker tribe. And the walker tribe all feels like the biker tribe is trying to run them over. And the biker tribe is like, I'm going to be careful. I'm not out here to run over walkers. And I don't know how to bring the two tribes together to have that conversation so that you're actually talking about what is it that you're scared of, and how can we, celebrate equality, that both tribes have a right to that park. And I don't know how to get there, but I just want to call out that I'm feeling this very strongly. And I don't feel like a lot of bikers are here to say what they think. And at the same time, I understand the reason we're doing this is that the select board said, figure out how to do it. So just building on Dorcas's point, it's imperfect. And if it kind of helps to create a park that is safer and also welcomes bikers as well as walkers, can we, is it good enough for the short term? And then I'll work with Dory to make sure it's not a long-term solution.
Can I just make a comment? I wish you at least look at Phil Posner's idea as a bicyclist who sees.
Let's have a
I also, I have plans, things which I'm not going to do, but I wanted to say one thing to start with. And that is that I think that somehow the word has gotten out when the Green Thumbs, for example, which I'm a member of, also says we want everybody to be safe. On what Junction Park to be safe. But what we mean, people may think, is we want the people who are using this walking. But the bikers can take care of themselves. I really want to say that I hope is not something that I'm a part of or representing a group that feels that way.
Yeah.
I truly think that we need to recognize we want everybody to be safe. And I was in Florida last week with a lot of people biking. And the thing I learned from most of them was we want a separate place. We don't want to try and integrate going when there's a park right in the middle of the park. And I really hope we can all be clear on this. We want this to be safe. Now, if we have a temporary plan that's nobody's going to be happy with, it's a temporary plan. But I'd like you to at least look what a biker and really an acknowledged biking, bikes everywhere, not just locally, has as an idea and has seen work. But please understand that we really want this safe for all. And I was a part of the design and planning with at the request of Concord Public Works, which approached the Green Thumbs for doing this. And we wish that we had realized we would have done something then.
Right. So here's where we are. So we have to go forward. Thank you for the comment. Yeah.
No, I'm serious about it, really, truly.
Okay.
Truly.
All right, Tracy.
Yeah.
Let's go along, girl.
Yeah.
If you want you to note that Barbara Pike had her hand up.
Oh.
Okay.
You moved on, so if you want to. take it.
Barbara, can you keep it quick just because we're getting late now?
Yes, I'm wondering if there's a legal minimum width for a bike trail.
8 feet. 8 feet, and that's how we came up with the 4 feet and 4 feet. Sorry, I didn't say it wrong. Okay, 8 feet. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so long term, given the time, we might have to keep each plan to like 5 minutes or so, but we'll just have to see how it goes. If not, actually less than that. Maybe 35
Might
minutes.
even be worth it to go through
Really
the
quickly.
mall and then go back over.
Yeah, maybe I'll do
People
that.
can comment.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
And then maybe ask people to send in their comments.
Because some of them
Okay.
are just, 4 feet.
All right.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
just do
yeah.
that.
So
Let's
let's,
just
yeah, so let's, so
Describe them and go.
I'm
from
gonna
there.
give you
People can
a,
comment on each one.
okay,
They
all right.
just, if they like, if they like, if they like, they approve it.
All right, so long term, we're thinking high level. Again, we're not telling you how this is going to be done. The focus here is where is the traffic going to go? Where are the rail trail users? Where are the non-rail trail users? We don't want to talk about signs, seating areas, markings, landscaping, retention bins, parking, lights, like anything, no details whatsoever. I'm going to try hard to do that myself. I'd like to hear pros and cons. Like I said, we were going to do individual, we'll do them all together, and then we'll come back and discuss pros and cons of the plans overall. And then if we want to proceed with any of these concepts or not, or if we need to rethink them. And if you have questions, so as far as feedback, when we get to comments, if you could please either provide a pro, a con, or a question, and that way we just keep things moving. And I think we'll limit our comments to like 30 seconds or a minute, just to be really concise.
So we're talking about members commenting, and we're asking the
Yeah.
public to mail in their pros and cons.
Yes,
And
did
Marcia,
everybody
these
hear
will-
Mark, Matt?
These will be posted? These-
Sorry, they are.
Okay, they're already posted.
They're
So
already posted.
since I'm close to the microphone, the plans are already posted, so we'd ask the public to write down your thoughts on pros and cons and questions by number and send them in to bfrtac@concordma.gov. And Tracy's going to lead the committee through.
Okay,
the quick
thank
plan.
you.
Thanks.
So the numbers that we're referencing are on the screen at the top, like JP2, this is number 2, just so you know to follow along. All right, so this first plan, the rail trail traffic, as you can see, will be on the left or the western side. And it actually leaves the current pathway mostly untouched, but it does take some additional land from the MBTA, so we would need their approval, which is going to take some work, but might be possible, to have the rail trail a little bit outside of the park. And so this one requires 4 feet of MBTA land.
Tracy, if I may, it also
Yeah.
requires a platform over the retention basin.
Ah,
So it's a little more engineered.
okay.
A full platform, Marcia, over the whole.
Well,
retention?
no, I just for where the trail is over the
bioretention area.
bioretention.
Okay.
Like a bridge.
Okay,
Awesome.
okay.
Let's do the
The
next
next
one. Nice work.
Third plan, long-term 3. This one similarly requires MBTA land, but it requires 6 feet instead. And as you can see, the paths start together and then diverge. So this one has a little bit of a park area in the front.
And Marcia, any comments on this since you made a
Well, then we
comment?
would lose all the parking spaces.
Got it,
that are
okay.
currently for the-
But fire retention, no platform over?
Correct.
Okay.
Who are the parking spaces for?
Club Car Cafe, that's an MBTA.
So they
property.
would have to agree that. or-
Well, the MBTA would have to agree to it. Part of
Can
their.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So in these long-term, the 3 and 4, are we basically saying that if whoever's on the bike trail, because remember, these are pedestrians on the rail trail or bicyclists or whatever, whoever's on the rail trail, you would be taking that population. It would be relatively obvious once this is done. Oh, now we head to the left or we head,
Left, yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. The bluish, blue or green,
green.
it's green. I'm terrible with colors, apologies. That colored shaded area is the bike path.
Okay, and so is it also accurate to say that the beauty and outline and dimensions of the park would therefore be untouched?
Well, you can actually see right there what was touched. So you've got the same, everything else is the same in this plan except where the rail trail goes in green, and then the addition of some sort of blockade in green, that green square at the top where the turn is.
Okay,
Everything
Okay.
else is the same in this one.
so I don't want to make assumptions, but it seems like this is fairly positive for the Junction Park, meaning you're pushing, what we're all talking about, the potentially increased traffic due to the bridge away from Junction Park.
That's number 2, 3, and 4, right? They're just variations on a theme.
Number 4 is the same thing.
Number 4 is in the park.
But requires retention area.
Right, got it. Okay, so sorry, go to number 4, Tracy.
Yeah, let's do number 4. So number 4, you can see it's just shifted a little bit to the right. This one is this is the retention area portion. So this would have to be relocated. And I think that was a big effort to get it there. So that's the downside here. And that we don't have to take away Club Card's parking lot. And we don't have to deal with permission from the MBTA.
Can I ask a question, not a comment? Question, how are you going to deal with the fact that when we've done counts of where people cross, they do not cross down behind Mandrioli Park? Most of the people coming from the north cross at the top here by the railroad track. Come in the north end.
Yeah, 20%, about 20% of the people who answer the survey say I go straight across the track. So we know that's an issue.
Okay.
Right, but we're not talking about that issue. We're talking about here's a design, and clearly that would be detail that we'd have to work through, right? Figure it out.
Option number 4 does show a planter, additional planter, where those granite posts are.
Right, with bollards on it, yeah, at the top.
Right.
Number 4, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, keep going. Okay, next one. The 5th plan, this one's actually a little bit different. The rail trail is still on the left, as you can see in green, but the trails stay together for a longer amount of time. Then they have that existing pathway crossing, whereas the other one, did we lose the crossing actually on the other one? Yes. Okay, so this one also takes away the ability to cross, which might be problematic, actually.
All three of these left-hand side ones, 2, 3, and 4. Oh, no, no. Okay.
And two
Pieces, okay. 2 and 3 pieces.
2 was gonna delete it.
Okay. So, yeah, so we were aware of the east-west traffic, and I'm not sure we have an answer yet, of what's the right way to do it. And I think that's one of the things we have to, consider on this, but we're not doing that right now. We're having Tracy run through the high level. Thank you.
We're going.
You were going. Okay.
All right, so we're back, we're number 5, okay. So as you can see, this one has the rail trail traffic going left. This one has planters or some sort of barrier making people know that they need to turn left. And this one has the park have kind of a nice curve to it. Leave off.
Is that a description? So what strikes me about this one is we're taking up some of the existing quote pathway for the rail trail, but we're creating a whole new way of using the park for pedestrians. And because that upper right-hand quadrant is fairly open, I mean, it's not being used that much. So this was a way of saying, let's create more space for people to walk and enjoy.
You're losing green space.
You're losing green space,
Yeah.
right?
And I think so far we've only seen plans that maintain the location of the intersecting railroads, whatever that's called.
The junction.
Yeah, yeah, the actual junction rail so far have maintained that location.
Yeah. And that could always move. So
Right, it can move, yeah.
It's just, what we did is took all the concepts that had been provided to you, what you developed and what others provided, and tried to make it work within the defined areas.
Yeah, with actual scale, which is great.
Yeah.
So this is, okay, this is the next one. This is the first one we're seeing where the rail trail actually goes on the right and has kind of a bigger curve. And this, the advantage I see of this one is it allows the rail trail people to actually enjoy the park a little bit more because they go through this really pretty area right before they pass all the trash bins. Once they cross the way.
And the obvious thing that came up in our meeting yesterday was there are 2 areas of congestion now, 2 crossings,
Right.
bikes and pedestrians, which
Yeah.
may kill it. But
Might be a
again,
problem.
we're just, we're trying to be creative.
This was put on the table during our meeting.
Yeah.
People suggested that.
Okay, and now we're at number 7.
Wait, there was another 6?
Yeah, you just looked
That
at
was 6?
That
Oh, okay,
was 6,
sorry.
yeah.
Number 7. Okay, number 7 has the traffic for the rail trail on the left and a separate trail on the right for pedestrians, right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Any other points here?
Yeah, we've opened up the little cross rail track a little bit, created, it kind of uses the space. To my colleagues, my colleague member comment, it does use more, use more space, pays more space in the park. Okay.
That's the 7. Do you want to go back to 1 and?
Yeah, so let's take comments from the committee and we'll see where they lead us.
These comments are pros and cons.
Right, pros and cons of each design or the concepts in general.
Number 2.
Wherever
Let's
you
go.
like.
Number 2. You have a comment. Is it a pro or a con?
Number 2 is the problem of whether or not we can get that extra land.
Yes.
In the parking lot, which I think has been turned down before, but who knows? But it does take out the hedge. And therefore, people walking to the park are now looking at cars. I'm not sure they want that.
Could you landscape an edge of the, can you landscape the one edge of the rail trail? And
Not sure there's room.
okay.
Also, yeah, it takes out a hedge, also kind of kills a tree. But
Okay.
that's 2.
All right. Good
Yeah.
question. Any other member comments?
Either situation of taking, getting involved with the MBTA, obviously, it's a big issue.
Yeah.
I guess my question would be, of the 2 choices, is there a way to maintain parking by taking 4 feet rather than 6 feet? There still could be some parking. I also don't know, Woods Hill Table has been turned their parking into tables. I don't know if they're going to keep doing that, but that could have an influence on the parking requirement. I think Marcia would know better, whether, because then nobody's backing out from that side of the lot, which might give you a little extra space where the MBTA is. So, if you're between those 2, I might say, well, I like 3, but if number 2 would give us remain parking there to some extent for the MBTA and its tenant, Health Car Cafe, then that would be an advantage. But getting involved with the MBTA, I'm sure.
Okay, let me make a comment on that because I did get involved with the MBTA and I reported in an email. And I lived and I reported an email. So I want to point out 2 things about that parking lot. As you look at this map, there is kind of part of a square that comes into that open area where the parking lot is. That square is owned by Wood Hill Table. And so the MBTA parking lot is not really that conducive to parking, even as it stands today, because it's got that big chunk taken out of it from the west. I can report that I spent a half hour on the phone with, I want to get his name right, Mr. Stuthoff. Mr. Stuthoff, who is the chief engineer of the MBTA for the last 5 years. And I shared with him the story of what we're trying to do, the concepts we're exploring. And the bottom line is the MBTA is willing to have a conversation about that. So and there is no guarantee, and I promised I would say there is no guarantee. He said there's no guarantee, right? They're not clear they could do it, but whatever, but they're willing to have a conversation. So we are going to have another conversation with him and the real estate team and ask the question of, well, if we have this idea, what would it take to have a further conversation? And we'll have someone from the town staff involved in that conversation. I'm sure it's a long journey, but I thought it was worthwhile to ask them would they be willing to talk. So I think depending on what happens in that phone call, our report can, for the long term, can focus more on, maybe it's more doable or it's not. I'm just saying right now, they're willing to talk, but there's no guarantee.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments, pros or cons from the committee?
On 2, 3, or 4, right? That's what you're.
Really on any of the plans, we can go anywhere at this point.
Again, the same problem. Also, in 3, you're losing an important tree. That tree is one of the things that shades the entire park from the traffic.
can I just say that you can actually take a tree that size and move it safely? Right, so you don't have to, you might lose it from that position. So one of the questions is, could we move it elsewhere in the park? There is technology to do that. So I don't want to say we have to chop it down. Yeah. What's its name? Okay.
I like the trees.
Comments from the committee?
Yeah,
Just a quick comment. This is Sam. I think 2, 3, and 4 all look like strong options to me. I think some of the latter options, 5, 6, and 7 are very creative, but they seem more complicated and maybe more complex for the walkers. So that's my quick thoughts.
Thank you, Sam.
thank you, Sam. I agree. You took the words out of my mouth. I think the one that we're looking here makes a lot of sense, is easy to understand and manage, and I think keeps the park close to as is. Possibly the one that used 4 feet as well. The others seem a little too complicated.
Any other committee member comments? As a reminder,
I'd like to,
actually send in their feedback by email, just because we have a long meeting. We have other topics to cover as well. But anyway, any other committee members?
yeah. I'd like to ask a question of the cyclists. The trail as currently designed and signed says one enters the park off Main Street, walks their bike up to and then turns onto the fenced path behind Woods Hill Table. Signed all the way saying, please dismount and walk your bike. In my time on the trail, don't believe I've ever seen a cyclist on that portion starting at Club Car, much less mounted or dismounted. I have gone through the park and I have always walked my bike, but I've done like apparently 20% of the people do, walked it straight across, walked across the tracks and remounted. I just wondering if people are noticing the use of that portion of the trail behind Woods Hill Table.
Well, I know from the survey, we did see, I don't remember the numbers anymore. We did see a significant portion of people report seeing cyclists, and they, we had them tell us how often they were dismounting. So we know there are cyclists. It's just a matter of.
I think he's asking a different question, which is how many people actually go around Woods Hill Table? on the path? Well, so we asked, so just to be clear, we asked the question, where does the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail go? And 75% of the people said it goes around Wood Hill Table. 5% said, I don't know. And 20% said we go straight across the tracks. So that's what the data said. Okay,
The data
now,
also, when we did a count on 2 successive weekend days, showed us that most people went right across. So the people who answered this were certain people, but most of the people probably didn't answer.
and they all answered it. And they were walkers, they were bikers, and they were biker walkers. So I can only speak to what the data said.
That data that was the written data, but we observed data.
Right. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that it seems like a significant enough number know where the trail goes. Now, whether they actually follow the trail, right?
That's following it.
Right. So I didn't say. I said they answered the question this way.
Okay.
Right. I didn't.
So we follow it.
Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead, John.
So my observation is this. General observation is that if we're going to ask cyclists to dismount at Main Street, walk through the park, walk around behind the Club Car, behind Woods Hill, behind the raised platform, we're not going to get much traffic because bicyclists don't like to get off and dismount. In fact, cyclists, as we know from the time we're little kids, like to cut across lawns. And remember a couple of years ago, the switchback at Powder Mill Road. Kids were starting to cut a path so they didn't have to go around. We had to put something up. I can't remember where they put a fence or a big block, but I think if we're not careful here, we may get the alternate paths that some people would like anyway, i.e. Commonwealth Avenue around to the parking lot, because somebody's going to say, I don't want to dismount and walk all that way. If I wanted to walk my bike, I could get it out of my garage and walk up and down the street. So that's the reason I asked for the observation of folks using that portion of the trail behind Woods Hill Table where the signs all say, please dismount and walk your bike.
So you're pulling two things out of what you said in terms of the pros and cons for the plan. If these plans 2, 3, and 4 require bikers to dismount in the blue area, that's going to cause an issue. That's a con from your perspective. That if we
no, the con from my perspective is if the requirement is to dismount and walk from there all the way around.
Got it.
That's regardless of plan. Unless something is done that sort of encourages the cyclists to use that portion, they're going to end up going around, or they're going to end up doing what I used to do, and that's go straight through the park and across the tracks.
Most serious cyclists, as reported in the survey and as from the people that I bike with, anybody who wants to go fast stays on the street. And anybody who's willing to go slow would slowly go through the park. Unless you're a jerk, of course.
So,
1 to 4?
yeah.
Okay, 4.
4.
My comment. Not a bad design. It looks expensive.
Yeah.
And that curve right by the Club Cafe is pretty tight for most.
Okay.
Any other comments on Plan 4?
My only pro is that, given that I took the task from the select board, that everything fits inside the park. So that's neither good nor bad. That's just, yeah. Okay. It has a cost, of course. 5.
On 5. 5, 6, and 7. I don't want to lose the green space.
I agree.
Yep.
Your comment is, although I do have a question, which is next to the cross trails. That space is currently totally unused right now. It's like there's like a big dirt berm. There's a big dirt berm because when Dory and I walked it, there's a big dirt berm up here. And there's a bunch of stuff not being used. It's kind of dark and unused. So when I walked it,
I'd like to improve it. Make it prettier and greener.
Right. Well, could you allow people to walk through, make it pretty and greener, and use it for a walk? So I don't want to.
Yeah, this actually gives you green on both sides. Right.
So I will. It's a con. You're from on one side, the lots of green, and the glass half full member. Opportunity maybe.
I wonder who that is.
Sorry. Okay. So I thought that was kind of.
I think that any of these, there'll still be people who would walk down the bike trail in any event. I mean, if you're walking into the park, it's not clear. It will find a way to separate people, just the park walkers. You end up, you're not on the right side of this thing, and then you're on the right side of that thing, and then I want to go into the park. Why would I go if I'm coming right rather than left, or either way? I wouldn't know. I would just keep walking. And all of a sudden there's a bike there. Oh, why is there a bike here? I don't know.
Well, it's good. I think it's a great user experience question. So if I'm walking my granddaughter in a baby carriage and I come across 62, right, and I want to walk the whole trail and then take her right by the prison to show her what happened. She's dead. Then, well, I want to walk through the park with her. Then how do I get back onto the trail?
Right.
So that's an interesting question. Okay, we don't have to solve it, but I think it's worth thinking about. The con is potential
Yeah, the
confusion.
ones on the
Richard,
left, on the west, pretty much you can understand how you could separate it.
That makes me think we might need, don't kill me, but we might need an 8th plan that actually keeps the paths together, has maybe a physical separation, and therefore you would know from the get-go which one you're gonna take because you see them all at the same time.
Can I just comment something even though I don't belong here?
It's my mom.
When I looked at the, it's Tracy's mom. I was like, I'm But I do a lot of design work, and when I was visioning, when I looked at this plan, this is plan 2. But one of the things that you just said about how do you know where to go, one of the tip-offs is hardscape. So if the bike trail is asphalt, you could do an apron, just like you do in the nice homes, an apron of cobblestone, maybe 10 or 15 feet deep. So that visually you're, holy, that looks like, but first of all, it's not conducive to riding on a bike. And it's obviously something residential. And you could do that on both ends. You could do it coming in nice and wide, cobblestone apron going into the park. And when you get off here, cobblestone apron going into the park and the asphalt continue.
Okay, so can you leave your card with the town staff?
Sorry, Trace. I told you.
Yeah, it's okay, I'm sorry. You can strike that comment from the record.
No. Mary Beth Parker is a member of this committee who couldn't be here tonight and commented about the need for accessibility. And when you're in a wheelchair, cobblestones are very difficult to cross.
Yeah, they said that even our current stones are called there too much.
Well, it could be a different kind of surface, but it's certainly a difference.
Okay.
All right,
Tracy, how are we
so,
doing?
I mean, it's late.
Okay.
Should we wrap it up?
Well,
Or-
go ahead.
Any other last
Make
comments
one
before
more
we move on?
comment, just because it has come up in terms of Commonwealth Act, which just tell people about how Commonwealth Act. And that wasn't put on this. And I think,
Oh, yeah.
the practicalities of that would require removing all the parking along that road, at the very least. I mean, that'd be the first step. All that parking would have to go, and you'd have to, it would be a very complicated, as a cyclist myself, I could say, well, fine, but I think that would be, and then you still have to get over the tracks at some point, which would require another significant jog. So I think it's not inappropriate that we don't have a plan that shows that it's a possibility. I think that's pretty far beyond our
That
scope.
was quite thoroughly discussed when my husband used to be on this committee.
Yeah.
That Commonwealth Avenue option was traffic.
Yeah. I don't mind it personally, but I think it's a realistic thing.
Yeah.
So, Tracy, I think if I can kind of take us back onto our agenda, feels like we've,
Look at our last slide.
last slide, yes.
With the last slide.
Yep, that's the last.
Big ideas. Go ahead. Chris.
No, I thought maybe that was good for you to talk to.
Okay. So, we talked a little bit about this. So have we forgotten any big ideas? Is there something major that we've missed in terms of siting? And I would like to think that we've kind of, if you flip all of these maps to get like a little cartoon, you kind of see our little trail go back and forth. And I think we've covered all of the ground of the park. So from a long-term perspective, I don't think we've missed anything within the context of what the select board asked us to do, which is working within the confines of the park. What feels like the most challenging aspect of the long-term plans, I think, so I guess I'll ask the question of the committee, what feels like the most challenging aspect? I think for me, it's the daunting nature of all of, of trying to manage the different constituencies and stakeholder needs. And, Jordan, hey, you're taking our green space, right, from here. or, you know, there are these things we have to kind of figure out, how do we present them to the select board? I think our work is to uncover those kinds of issues and to surface them for the select board and say, this is what we think, and these are some of the challenges we've uncovered. And I think that's the best we can do, you know, for the select board at this time. I don't think we're going to have a solution that everyone will be happy with, but the question is, do we have one that will be good enough to go forward? I know some of my colleagues behind me have, you know, they have some desires. We've had conversations about them. I think that there is a solution here in the long term, and that's what we'll do.
If I'm not, I think what I heard from other committee members is that something like 2, 3, or 4 seem to be the more logical, realistic.
Yeah, that's right.
And the other thing creates other complications.
Right. And the risks of 2 and 3 are that the MBTA doesn't want to play. So I think we have a fiduciary responsibility, maybe that's overstating it, to have an alternative that we can talk to that, you know, has been kind of vetted, and maybe it is 4, right, which has its own you know, challenges, I think, for it. But I guess the
Hey, Nat,
yes.
I just wanted to throw a couple things out on the slide that you have here. Sorry, let me go back to this word content. Okay, so the big ideas that we may have forgotten, and maybe it's in one of the earlier meetings that I missed, but there are some very out of the box solutions that we discussed early on that were uber expensive, that they would solve a lot of problems. We didn't know aesthetically if they would be appealing. And I'm basically talking about a bridge, you know, really getting, you know, who knows how much money it would cost and how many years, but by showing that, hey, there is this absolutely, I don't want to say outlandish, but tenable idea that will really preserve the park, take away the primary concern, which is increased traffic and therefore reduce safety. The only downside is you have an unknown of cost. So that was the big idea that we raised way back in the beginning. And then my only other comment, and it goes back to something that, you know, I've just been thinking about since the day that I, you know, got involved in this, is from a safety perspective, any plan that we offer up should very clearly state that we want to make it really difficult for any cyclist, whether they're dismounted or otherwise, to go across those tracks. I think this is so important. We already had a death there. I don't know why people don't talk about it more. It should almost be in all of the plans. It's almost unrelated. You must do this. And maybe it's unrelated, it's a non sequitur, but they've got to fix that. So those are the 2 things I wanted to comment on.
Good point.
Yeah, good point. And Deborah, to that point, I think in conversations with the committee, we've already said, I think I remember, I'll have to dig in the minutes, that even though it wasn't in our remit, in our report, we were going to say something about the crossing, and that it is an issue that the town needs to think about.
Yeah, and I think you know, the one plan that you showed, on plan number 4, there's some kind of a green thing.
Yeah.
There could be, you know, other green things staggered away from the. From the
We were
existing
just
post to make it impossible to drive through. If you have
Like they
this.
do down, just a change to you.
Yeah.
They do down at
Yeah, this was meant to be high level, so we actually
Yeah.
got rid of all the detail,
Yeah.
including
Right.
things like that, and it only remained on a couple of them for whatever reason, but
Definitely could
Yeah.
go the big plan.
So-
route.
yeah.
all the old ones.
So I think this was great. This was a fantastic discussion. I appreciate everybody's comments and opinions and perspectives. So we'll continue with our plan to meet with the town staff and see what they think in terms of the feasibility in each of these ideas. And I'll pass it to, who's talking next? There.
But you are going to look at the pros and cons that people say
Yes.
to you as
Yes,
well,
yes, so
right?
definitely. So,
Okay, I
yeah,
just want to make sure that
definitely,
does happen.
Yes, and,
It will, yeah,
okay.
yeah, no, I mean, part of this process is to get that. I think we've done
Yeah.
pretty good job of capturing stuff, and
Yeah.
so I definitely want to get in there. And the, yeah, that'll just make the select board's job harder for a long time. They're gonna have to wrestle through, but we'll tell them what we've heard.
Well, when you say town staff, you mean, I hope the engineers, somebody from the
Yes,
engineering.
yes,
I
yes,
think
yes,
so,
yeah,
yes.
that's exactly right.
Can I take a quick public comment? Anne hasn't talked yet. So-
Oh, go ahead, Ann.
Anne, would you
Anne
like to
Sussman.
share?
Hi, thanks so much. Ann Sussman, 534 Old Marlborough Road. I just want to say thanks so much for doing this. I bike and I walk the trail every day. I think 2 and 3 are the best. I am a licensed architect. You've got to keep it simple. What's beautiful about a rail trail, the reason all people go is because it's so obvious, it's intuitive. So your answer to your problem here, it has to be as intuitive. As a cyclist though, I'm going to say, I'm probably going to end up cutting through ComAv because I can just keep riding. You know, when I go out on my bike, I don't go to walk. So you're up with that contradiction. Okay, but thanks very much for doing this. I think 2 and 3 are best. I think you want to be able to go directly around the train station. You want to immediately turn left. You don't want to go up forward and then make a U and go back. The way it's designed now makes no sense. So people don't use it. Thanks a lot. You're doing a great job. Bye.
In the interest of time, we have a number of other things on the agenda, but we've used up a lot of time here. Deborah, you were on tap for talking about e-bikes.
I'd like to postpone that to the next meeting. It's pretty late. If that would be a motion I would make, since due to the hour.
I guess I want to ask the committee, do we want to spend another, 5 or 10 minutes on other business, or should we think about pushing some of the other matters to our next meeting? I am conscious of everyone's time here. On the agenda, we're going to do the e-bike thing, Deborah, that I had said you would do. I think we can push the bridge opening piece. I'll definitely push the trail count. I don't think we have any major liaison reports coming up. Deborah, do you want to do a quick update, or would you like to be first off in our next meeting?
I'm happy to go either way. Whatever the committee wants is fine with me.
Deborah, I'm just thinking, like, we just lost all the members of the public here, except for one, very dedicated.
He has to stay here.
One very, very important member is left, right, of the public.
Your work,
I'll
so
hear it better next time.
I think next time maybe everybody will hear better, we'll all be fresh.
Yeah, and we'll make it the first thing on the agenda.
Yeah.
And maybe by then the e-bike law will be moved out of the Joint Transportation Committee.
Well, I can tell you that there was an update. It was postponed. So it was pushed back again. They're going to take it up a little later, but I was curious, like, are these meetings supposed to go until 8:30 or 9?
I don't know. I think it depends on the amount of work. 8:30 is preferable. I always feel bad looking over at Marcia, either on Zoom or here, that this is added to her day, but I would like to keep them to 8:30.
Okay, if we can just agree, because some of us, have
4:30
a.m. Yeah, well, it's just 4:30 a.m. start, so.
All right, so we will try and keep it to 8:30, and Deborah, we will have you first out of the gate. And if there's anything you want to talk about, let's chat a little bit later. We can chat tomorrow.
And next meeting is it's the Thursday before Good Friday. That may be challenging for some. I may be in a plane. I will know soon.
Okay.
But I'll let you know.
Okay. Thank you for ceding your time for this session. Appreciate it. I know you worked hard on this. You know that I've shared your e-bike report with a couple of towns too.
Yeah, and that gentleman never got back to us, and unfortunately I need advance notice just to block off from work, and I never heard anything. So yeah, I think our little group here will make a lot of progress regardless. And the good news is e-bikes aren't going anywhere. They're only increasing dramatically.
Right, got it, okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. Let me get gotta get my roll call list too, because I may forget something. No. Mr. Hollander,
Aye.
Mr. Soden,
Aye.
Ms. Edelman,
Aye.
Ms. Miller, Mr. Stearns,
Aye.
Ms. Hanson,
Aye.
and Mr. Welch, aye. This meeting is now ended as of 8:58 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Great job. Really great.